tonight.
Hello to New Hampshire.
As Republicans prepare to head to the primary polls.
Not too happy. We now have two candidates left.
The New Hampshire GOP grapples with the latest 2024 dropout. Plus,
you've got so many of our enemies attacking us.
How the fight for religious freedom is centered to growing regional tensions around the world. And how the Biden administration is using abortion as a top issue on the campaign trail. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The nation's first primary state sees a last-minute shakeup before voters head to the polls. Good evening in Washington. I'm Jenna Browder. The Republican presidential field has narrowed once again heading into tomorrow's New Hampshire primary. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis sending shockwaves over the weekend, dropping out of the race less than 48 hours before voting gets underway. CBN's Matt Galka has our top story tonight. Matt?
Well, Jenna, two big names remain, former President Donald Trump and former Ambassador Nikki Haley. Haley said she wanted a one-on-one matchup with the former president, and now she's got it, but her path to a potential victory is still narrow.
I have watched the entire political elite yesterday and today. I've watched the entire media elite yesterday and today say that I should drop out for the good of the country to support Donald Trump. America doesn't do coronations. We believe in choices. We believe in democracy.
Haley told supporters in New Hampshire Monday she was ready for the fight. Now a two-person race with Ron DeSantis dropping out and immediately endorsing Trump, taking a parting shot at Haley on his way out.
Trump is superior to the current incumbent, Joe Biden. That is clear. I signed a pledge to support the Republican nominee, and I will honor that pledge. He has my endorsement because we can't go back to the old Republican guard of yesteryear, a repackaged form of warmed-over corporatism that Nikki Haley represents.
DeSantis edged out Haley for a distant second in Iowa, but said there wasn't a clear path to victory heading into the New Hampshire primary. Trump set aside the insults he had routinely lobbed at DeSantis, dubbing him desanctimonious, and thanked him for the support at a Sunday night rally.
Before we begin, I'd like to take time to congratulate Ron DeSantis and, of course, a really terrific person who I've gotten to know, his wife, Casey, for having run a great campaign for president. He did. He ran a really good campaign, I will tell you. It's not easy. They think it's easy doing this stuff, right? It's not easy.
Haley has polled well in New Hampshire, though Trump still has a tight grip on the numbers. A Washington Post Monmouth University poll released Monday had Trump over Haley 52 to 34%.
Big win! Big win!
Another hurdle for Haley will be whether or not she can pick up enough of the DeSantis supporters now moving to a different candidate. The same poll showing Trump with a big lead over Haley showed DeSantis voters were twice as likely to pick Trump as a second choice over Haley.
Normally you would think, well, okay, the candidate getting out of the race, a DeSantis or someone like that, would benefit Nikki Haley in a one-on-one matchup. It's not working out that way. As a matter of fact, I think what we'll see on Tuesday night is the exact opposite. I think Trump will actually build his support because DeSantis is not the candidate that Nikki Haley necessarily wanted to get out of the race to make her political plight better.
Now, that latest poll was taken before DeSantis officially dropped out. He was polling at around 8%, which might have been the writing on the wall that his campaign needed to make it official. Jenna.
Yeah, Matt, Nikki Haley, she mentioned that there's been pressure for her to drop out of the race. Any sign she might do that anytime soon?
Well, no, but at least not right now. She is banking on a big showing in New Hampshire, but it does get a little trickier in South Carolina. On one hand, it's her home state where she was a former governor, and on the other, Trump's team told donors that their polling in the state shows the former president beating Haley by almost 40 points. Haley has campaign events already scheduled for South Carolina this week.
Matt, what about Biden? Where do his numbers stand among voters?
Well, they're not great. His approval rating has hit an all-time low. In fact, it's the lowest of any president in the last 15 years. A recent ABC News Ipsos poll finds only 33% approve of Biden's job performance. That's down 4 points in just 5 months. Meanwhile, 58% disapprove. One of the leading causes of the president's lackluster approval rating is the economy. 43% of Americans say today they're financially worse off than when President Biden took office. It's a narrative the president hears, and he's trying to fight.
If you notice, they're feeling much better about how the economy is doing. What we haven't done is letting them know exactly who got it changed. That's the part. That's what's happening. If you look at the consumer confidence measures, they're way up. Look at across the board. Everybody's doing better, and they believe it.
As campaigning continues, the president will no doubt continue to try and tout Bidenomics to voters. Jenna?
All right, Matt Galka, thank you very much. Nathan Gonzalez is the editor and publisher of Inside Elections and a Faith Nation contributor, and he joins us now. Nathan, welcome. So I'd just like to start with your reaction to DeSantis exiting the race, and do you think we'll see him enter this race again sometime down the road?
Well, big picture, I'm not surprised. I mean, Governor DeSantis has lost support in this race since the day he announced early last summer. It hasn't gotten any better. He peaked at the wrong time. And so I think he is done. He's done for 2024. You know, there's who knows what things are going to look like in 2028 or beyond. He's young enough to have, he's still the governor of Florida, young enough to have a future career. But this race is over for Governor DeSantis.
And Nikki Haley, Matt mentioned the Washington Post Monmouth University poll. There's also another one by Suffolk University that shows Trump at 58, Haley at 38. Trump at 57, Haley at 38 in New Hampshire, a 19-point difference. Nathan, if she finishes a distant second tomorrow, does she still have a path forward?
I'm not sure that she has a path forward, even if she wins New Hampshire. And so if she loses by 10, 20, 30 points, it's going to be very difficult to stay in the race. Remember, the next state is South Carolina, which is not for another month. And even though she's from South Carolina, Matt laid out, well, that she's not the favorite to win South Carolina. So that's a long time to really endure questions of what's the path forward. It's a long time to convince donors that there's still a path to victory. And so unless she comes close in New Hampshire, I think we're going to see this field consolidate down to one person very quickly.
Meanwhile, Trump faces upwards of 90 charges in 3 states and Washington, D.C. It's unlikely, but if for whatever reason, Nathan, he's not able to run, do you think, is Nikki Haley the guaranteed shoo-in, and do you think that's part of her calculation here?
I think Nikki Haley and others want to be that alternative in case something happens, but a conviction wouldn't come likely until after all the primaries are done. I mean, these trials haven't even started yet, and so a conviction would be much further down the road and probably closer to the convention when things might be a mess. But I think we need to, Jenna, shift our thinking about these trials, that yes, they helped him in the primary. They helped him among Republican voters, but that doesn't mean that the trials and the indictments are going to help him in the general election. Those are 2 different electorates. So we should be prepared that this race could evolve and change over the next year.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's talk about Joe Biden, Nathan, the lowest approval rating in 15 years. He put out a video saying that he's the only person to beat Donald Trump, and he's looking forward to doing it again. Your thoughts on that as a rematch between the two does look more and more likely by the day?
Well, just because it's a rematch doesn't mean it's going to have the same result. Both Trump and Biden are significantly more vulnerable than what they were before. Biden is an unpopular incumbent. Trump has been indicted 90+ times in 4 different cases. And so they're both bringing more weaknesses to the table. But I would say maybe the downside for Republicans on consolidating around Trump here before too long is that then voters start to look at Biden and Trump more specifically in this one-on-one battle. And that is where Biden could do better. Meaning right now, if voters are just concerned about Biden and the job he's doing and his age, Biden's not going to do well. But when they look at the alternative and they see Trump and some of his flaws, then that's better for Biden. That doesn't guarantee he's going to win, but that's just a better frame of the election that Democrats are hoping for.
All right, Nathan Gonzalez of Inside Elections, thank you so much for coming on this evening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Good to see you, Jenna.
Thanks, Nathan. Well, to the Middle East, new hope tonight for a pause in the ground war in Gaza. Axios reports Israel has proposed a 2-month ceasefire in exchange for all remaining hostages being released. Today, family members of some 100 hostages held captive by Hamas since October 7th terror attacks stormed the Israeli Knesset during a committee session in Jerusalem. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is calling Hamas demands in exchange for the release of hostages, quote, no real proposal. On Sunday, protesters joined former hostages and relatives of hostages outside Netanyahu's home, demanding Israeli lawmakers do more to free their loved ones.
We are demanding that they fix the failure from the 7th, and that can only start with returning all of the hostages alive. Bringing home 136 hostages in bags can never be considered any part of a victory. We demand that the government do its part, bring a deal, get the deal done, and bring home the remaining hostages alive.
Meanwhile, Israel is continuing to uncover more tunnels in the Han Yunis area, where Israel Defense Forces say some 20 hostages were held. All this as Palestinians face a humanitarian crisis and an increasing death toll. According to the United Nations, the entire population of Gaza is now at risk of famine. Well, the fight against worldwide religious persecution will take center stage next week in Washington. The International Religious Freedom Summit is bringing together unlikely allies who are reaching across the political aisles in order to protect people's right to worship freely. Tara Mergener brings us that story.
Religious violence has risen to historic and alarming levels over the past decade, even in places you might not expect. The summit held here in our nation's capital aims to create a powerful, albeit unlikely, coalition to highlight the plight of the persecuted and look for solutions. The Hamas terror attack on Israel in October brings a sobering impact to this year's meeting.
The attacks in Israel were motivated by deep religious hatred, by a profound and saturated anti-Semitism in Hamas. And that attack, and now the conflict in Gaza, has the potential to put at risk the stability of the whole world.
From China and North Korea to Africa, the Middle East, and beyond, an estimated 360 million Christians face persecution worldwide, with more than a dozen killed each day over their faith.
You've got so many of our enemies attacking us. Whether it's Russia that's attacking, whether it's Iran that's attacking, whether it's really Turkey through Azerbaijan on Armenia attacking. And almost every one of these situations has a deep religious component to it.
No faith community is spared. Attacks on religious freedom touch each culture, nation, religion, and political system across the world. Unexpected cases are now also popping up in established democracies like Japan and Finland.
The right to practice one's religion of choice is so frequently violated by governments all over the world.
That message will again be loud and clear through first-person accounts at the summit.
I stand here before you today as a witness to the regime's abuse and to represent thousands who have been tortured or executed in Iran's prison.
At a time of great division, the nation's capital will serve as the epicenter of a powerful bipartisan movement for advocates and politicians from all over the world to work to protect the rights of all to worship as they choose.
Some of the people we have brought together, very progressive Democrats with very conservative, socially conservative Republicans. We have brought, for example, representatives from the American Atheists. It's really, in that sense, quite an inspiring movement and very much a positive counterpoint to all the division we face on so many fronts.
In addition to persecution, special sessions will promote interfaith dialogue to help promote peace and create a blueprint for international collaboration and legislation here at home.
We're going to see if we can come up with some agenda items that we can put forward in front of the Congress that can build a longer-term solution.
Organizers say a key goal will be avoiding partisan politics and pushing governments to help ensure religious freedom is an important foreign policy issue as well as a fundamental human right. In Washington, I'm Tara Mergener, CBN News.
Thank you, Tara. And coming up, the battle over abortion in America as the nation marks Sanctity of Human Life Day. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Since the 2022 decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, abortion access has been a rallying cry for many on the left. Today, on the 51st anniversary of when Roe initially legalized the procedure in America, the White House announced it's expanding contraceptive and abortion protections, including having federal agencies make free contraceptives more available under the Affordable Care Act and create easier access to birth control for federal workers. The White House says it also aims to increase awareness of the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, a law used to protect abortion in emergency situations. Speaking in Wisconsin today, Vice President Harris called pro-life supporters extremists, vowing the administration will fight against them.
In the United States Congress, extremists are trying to pass a national abortion ban to outlaw abortion in every single state. But what they need to know is that if Congress passes a national abortion ban, President Joe Biden will veto it. To truly protect reproductive freedoms, we must restore the protections of Roe.
And tomorrow, the president and vice president will hold their first joint campaign rally of the 2024 season in Virginia. It'll focus on abortion and the fight here in the Commonwealth. Well, Evie Osment is Vice President of Communications for Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America. She recently spoke with my co-anchor John Jessup about the battle over abortion this election year. It is a fight that's changed considerably since Roe was overturned. And as Osment explains, the focus has shifted to state legislation.
Just if we could step back just a little bit and think about 2 years ago, there was no meaningful legislation that could pass for pro-life protections outside of what Roe v. Wade accounted for, which was late-term abortion. So right now, we have a lot to be thankful for against the corporate media narrative. And you're right, state to state, we're looking at pro-life protections, and we are so thankful that nearly half of this country in the states has allowed for pro-life protections at 12 weeks or earlier.
Well, it is no surprise here, a big election year. How do you see abortion playing in this year's presidential politics?
Oh, we know that abortion will be playing in this year's presidential politics because the Biden administration has already declared that they are going to make it central to their campaign. That's why we cannot hide away from the issue of pro-life. We have got to recommit our strategy to help mothers, to serve mothers, and to save children. You can't shy away from that. And in fact, what the corporate media will never tell you, poll after poll, even recent polling shows that Americans want significant limits on abortion by the first trimester, right around there. So we have really got to work with that and help people understand that this is important and there is consensus if we work for it.
Well, this past November, Ohio voted to enshrine abortion into the state's constitution. That was a big money fight on both sides. Evie, what lessons were learned from that fight, and was it similar to others from Kansas to Wisconsin and beyond?
Yes, there's definitely a through line with there, and that's money and misinformation. Ohio in particular, they declared to women across the state that if you don't vote for this, you will not be able to get miscarriage care. That is so misleading and a blatant lie that the Ohio AG had to come out and speak out against it. So we have got to fight back against these lies and the fear-mongering from the left and pro-abortion side. And then you're right, the money in Ohio, it was 2 or 3 to 1, millions and millions, George Soros funded. And in Virginia, 10 to 1, abortion ads on TV. We have got to compete with money and messaging.
All right, Evie Osment with Susan B. Anthony, Pro-Life America. We so appreciate your time and your insights tonight.
Thank you.
Well, closing in on 2 years of conflict, the latest on Russia's war in Ukraine, when Faith Nation returns. President Biden is warning the world about the consequences of abandoning Ukraine in its fight against Russia. With funding for Ukraine at a stalemate in Congress, the country faces a $40 billion shortfall, according to Wall Street Journal analysis. The U.S. and EU were expected to cover some $30 billion of that gap. Meanwhile, on both sides of the front lines, reports of rats and mice in the trenches, reportedly spreading diseases, causing soldiers to vomit and bleed from their eyes. Grim echoes of the gruesome conditions of World War I trench warfare. President Biden at the White House Friday said the U.S. must continue its support.
If we walk away and Russia is able to sustain their onslaught and bring down Ukraine, what do you think is going to happen in the Balkan countries? What do you think is going to happen from Poland to Hungary and Urban? I mean, seriously, think about it. It changes the dynamic. Magnificent.
And for his part, Donald Trump said he could stop the war within 24 hours if reelected. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky responded, inviting the former president to Kyiv if he can stop the war. 2 Navy SEALs are presumed dead after a 10-day search covering more than 21,000 square miles off the coast of Somalia. They were boarding a ship carrying Iranian-made weapons bound for Yemen in rough seas at night when one of them fell into the water and the second jumped in after him. U.S. Central Command says it is conducting a recovery mission for the service members, adding, quote, "We mourn the loss of our 2 Navy Special Warfare warriors, and we will forever honor their sacrifice and example." And we will be right back right after this. Finally tonight, kids across the country know the joy that goes along with making snow angels. But with winter weather affecting big parts of the country, some New York adults are getting in on the Snow Angel Act in a slightly different way. A Christian ministry called 8 Days of Hope is sending out angels to help shovel snow for citizens in Buffalo. More than 5 feet fell on parts of Buffalo over the last week. The nonprofit's volunteers quickly responded, clearing mounds of snow off sidewalks, driveways, and rooftops. One volunteer says the goal is to remove some of the burden for neighbors.
Our hope is just to love people and serve people and remove some of the challenges that they're going through right now with this heavy snowfall.
And the act of kindness has been met with much appreciation, with folks in Buffalo referring to the snow shoveling volunteers as actual angels. And good for them. That's going to do it for us this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.